Snub nose revolvers. Is it worth going to a 9mm snub nose revolver over a 38 special? So today I'm going to test some Federal punch ammunition. And I'm going to use my 2-inch barrel Taurus revolvers here, my Taurus 605 to test the 38 special, and my Taurus 905 to test the 9mm. So our 38 special is a plus P, and our 9mm is a standard pressure, and that's just how they come. You know, I can't make any selection of something different when this is the only option that they come in. But our 9mm is a 124 grain jacketed hollow point, rated at 1150 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. Our 38 special plus P is a 120 grain jacketed hollow point, rated at 1000 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. So we're going to see if there's a huge difference by going to 9mm instead of 38 special. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic gel test. So I'm going to go into plain 10% clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. No denim in the way to clog a hollow point or anything like that. And we'll see, what these hollow points will look like expanded. And then I'll do a real world simulation. So I'm going to have 4 layers of denim on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we'll have a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard after 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and then 8 inches, so 9.5 inches with rib simulation in there to simulate about a 9.5 inch target. So we'll do a plain clear ballistic shot and then a real world simulation shot, and then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 38 special plus P. We are rated at 1000 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. So for my 2-inch barrel, we're probably not going to see that kind of velocity, but let's see what we get here. .878, 885, 894, 904. 895. So a lot of people think that, for whatever reason, they think that 9mm will load in a 38 or 357 Magnum revolver, but they do not. They don't even come close because the cases are much thicker, much bigger at the back than a 357 or 38. So even though the bullets are a little bit smaller, it's a tapered cartridge. It doesn't quite work like that. So we'll see what we get here with our 9mm. We're rated at 1150 through a 4-inch barrel. The amount of barrel travel in this through the cylinder and all that would equate to about 3.5 inches if it were a semi-auto, but then we also have cylinder gap gas loss, so not really sure what we're gonna get here. So let's see how close we get to 1150 of the snub nose revolver. $1100. 1086, 1096, 1113, 1091, and we also, the impact is pretty high, but I was gonna say we also have about the same amount of felt recoil in this with a significant jump in energy. So, and that makes a lot of sense because a lot of times 38 special plus P and 9mm standard pressure share the same powder charge. And if you're sharing about the same bullet weight, just because you're making it have more pressure by putting it in a smaller case doesn't necessarily create more actual recoil. So about the same recoil, a lot more power. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these compare. All right, a first shot in the plain clear ballistics, no denim in the way to clog a hollow point or anything like that. Some people do ask why I get so close to these gel blocks because, a typical, self-defense scenario would be a little bit further, and they think I get extremely more benefit by getting closer. I really don't think so. There's not really a big difference between a couple feet and a couple yards, but the reason why I get so close is so that I can make accurate shots and not have bullets go in an existing channel, to keep all my shots as valid as possible, because I'm doing 4 shots in the one block. So that's why I get so close. But 38 special plus P, plain clear ballistics. All right. Let's hit that with the 9mm. I left my revolver up there, and we'll hit it with that. All right, 9mm. Let's see how this does. Let's go take a look. All right, so definitely a big difference there, and a lot of things going on. Expansion, penetration depth, and just the size of the actual channels that it cut through there. Huge difference there. So our 38's on the bottom, our 9mm up here on top. So there's a little bit more with our 9mm than our 38, but once we get into this block, there's a lot more going on with that 9mm as far as cutting damage you can see. And the reason for that is because the expansion is a lot bigger with that 9mm. As where with our 38, it's a little bit more controlled expansion. So it looks like the jacket material is probably a little thinner on that 38 to allow for more consistent expansion. So we got okay performance, and we have really good penetration. We're right here at about 15.5 inches of penetration. I know camera parallax will make that look like we're at 16.25 because this camera stretches a little bit. But from a front-on shot or front-on angle here, we're right there about 15.5 inches. So it's not bad performance at all. With our 9mm though, I can see a lot bigger expanded petals, and we are right there at about 20.25 inches. And really big expansion. So I would say our 9mm did a lot better. It's slightly over penetrated, but that's not something that I would consider true over penetration where I'm really worried about, you know, that's going to pass through an attacker. It's very unlikely because attackers have bones in them, and we'll see that right now. Let's put our rib simulation and our denim, see how these compare in our real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation: 4 layers of denim, 3 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting back ribs. So let's see how our 38 Special Plus P does in our real world simulation. All right, let me set that back up and hit it with the 9mm. All right, real world simulation, 9mm. Let's see what this does. Let's go take a look. All right, big difference here. And you know, when I make these shots, a lot of people think that, for whatever reason, they think that I'm shooting through the same channel, because you know, even though I try to space these out to where they're not blocking the view of the back channel, they do block the view of the back channel. So the first shots I made on this other side here are 3 inches over that way, but the new shots actually just simply block what we're seeing here. So there's a big difference here in performance for sure. A big difference here. When we look at our bottom shot here with our 38 Special Plus P, that's definitely tumbling. And generally when you see tumbling, you don't see expansion very well. Our 9mm, we're actually just poking right through, and we're not actually expanding yet. I prefer to see expansion before hitting this, but it looks like we're not seeing that. But it looks like right after getting through rib simulation, then it starts expanding quite large. And that could just be that's how they designed it, which honestly, that's not a bad design if that's how they were designing it, because if you could poke through ribs and then expand out huge, you're going to get some massive damage. And I am seeing a huge wound path here that I normally don't see with most cartridges. So that is performing quite fantastic overall. Now with the 38 Special, we limited that penetration from tumbling and whatnot. We got about 13.25 inches of penetration. With our 9mm here, we got about 17.75. We are pretty much textbook with what we want to see. And if you didn't know it, when I put the 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard right here, that pretty much brings your penetration number down almost exactly to what organic gel will give, just 1 layer of that. So 17.75 with some really big expansion. That is some really good performance overall from what I'm seeing there. And I just want to move this to the top here so you can see what I'm talking about before. Our first 9mm up there. And then over here about 3.5 inches is our second 9mm. And we can see the same type of thing going on. If we look from a bottom view here with our 38s, our first 38 was here. Our next 38 was here. But the way I have to place these shots, I space it out so that we have equal distance from the corners, from the sides, between each other. So when I space them out like that, it gives the impression that they're going through the same channel when they're not even close. But I get that comment on almost every video, so I thought I would clear that up. So definitely way better performance with this particular 9mm. So let's pull these out of block. I'll take a close-up look at them. Then I'll shoot a steel, see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel, our 38 special and our 9mm. So our 38 kind of expands a little bit differently than a lot of bullets. It looks like it's just simply designed to open up at slower velocities. And for what it is, it's not bad. Looks like it performs exactly how it's supposed to, even out of a 2-inch barrel in plain gel. Our 9mm, definitely a lot more petals going on, bigger petals I mean, more expansion, just a really good bullet overall. And these do look like they are banded together, which is kind of like a bonding. You see a cantilever on that 9mm bullet there, kind of locking that jacket to that core. And it's got a really thick jacket. So honestly, not a bad design for what it is. Now we go through our real world simulation. Our 38 special had a lot of trouble there. And we can see why it kind of tumbled through. It just opened up one side and then just it would tumble through. So not doing particularly well with our 38 special plus P. Our 9mm, this is interesting. It got bigger and the petals didn't peel back, and yet it went really deep still. So that would cause a ton of damage because those are very thick petals. Fantastic performance, and the fact that they were able to keep really good velocity even out of a little snub nose revolver is really impressive to me, because a lot of times when I test loads like this, I mean, these are standard pressure 124 grains. I've tested like plus P, and we're not even hitting like 1,000 feet per second with some of the plus P 9mm 124 grains with a lot of different loads. But these actually were like less than 50 feet per second from the rate of velocity from a 4-inch semi-auto. And when we look at this, and look what I paid for these things here. You know, typically Federal HST and Gold Dot, I'm paying anywhere between $35 and $40 sometimes. But you know, that's a really good price for really good performance. So I'd say Federal kind of knocked it out of the park with that 9mm load, because you know, you guys know I really don't love 9mm. I hate on it a lot because a lot of times I see stuff that doesn't look that good. Well, I'm gonna be honest here, that looks extremely good. So I would say overall, this is a fantastic 9mm load overall. I know I've tested it in the past in semi-autos and also got really good performance. But I was not expecting to see good performance out of that little revolver. And that is fantastic. So that's a close-up look at those. All right, so I decided to come back to 16 yards instead of my normal 14 yards, and we'll just do all the shooting from here. I'm not gonna back it up, but I wanna see what the difference is in the practical accuracy and shootability, and definitely a reload, see what the difference is in a reload, because there is a big difference. And you know, how you reload a 9mm revolver versus a 38 special. There's many different ways to reload both of these, honestly, but the most common and practical in my mind is the speed loader for our revolver cartridges and the moon clip for our semi-auto cartridges. So these you have to release into the gun, these ones just kind of drop into the gun. So we'll see what I can do here, what kind of practical accuracy and how well I can reload these things. I'm just going from an average guy's view of this. I'm not putting on belts to have special, you know, special compartments to hold these reloads. I'm just going to pull out of the pocket and reload. So let's see how I can do for practical accuracy with our 38 special plus P. Did miss one. Reload. So not bad overall. It's not particularly difficult to do that. Now our 9mm, got some moon clips in here. I did notice, and I have noticed with every round I've ever fired through this gun, it's like the point of impact with 9mm through a revolver. It generally shoots a little bit higher for some reason. So I'll aim kind of low and see how our reload does and our practical accuracy does. Alright, so a lot of different things going on there. You saw in that last shot, for whatever reason, I couldn't pull through that last shot unless I jerked the trigger as hard as possible. And I've seen that with, you know, the revolvers, all the revolvers I've used with moon clips all tend to do that. So it's one of those weird things, because when you put something in a moon clip, now, you know, a lot of people say, well, it's great because they all become one and they all eject out one. But the downside of that is if one has a problem, now the rest of them have a problem. If one is backed out a little bit from the chamber, now the whole moon clip backs out, and you saw what could happen there. So it's one of those things where with a 9mm revolver, even though you get kind of better ballistics than a 38 plus P, couple things, they tend to shoot high. I've noticed that not just in this, but when I would fire a 45 auto through the Smith & Wesson Governor, when I would fire through my Smith & Wesson Model 610, 40 Smith & Wesson, or 10mm through that. And with this, they all seem to shoot high for some reason. I'm not really sure why. They just, points of impact are higher. And it could just be the way they're going through the cylinder. I really don't know what the reason is for them to be that way, but they tend to shoot higher, and you have some moon clip issues there. And as we're with 38 Special, your terminal ballistics isn't as good. However, everything is a little bit more simplified and pure. You're not going to have rotation problems. You're not going to have issues with bent moon clips. It's easy to carry a reload. So it's really one of those things. One's not like entirely better. You have some trade-offs there. But as far as terminal ballistics go, yeah, 9mm kind of does quite a bit better than 38 Special plus P with your typical loads. And that makes sense. Your pressure is basically doubled with about the same amount of powder charge. So you're going to get double pressure on the same powder. You're going to get better performance. And the recoil between these things here, pretty much exactly the same, even though we had more power with the 9mm revolver. So to sum it up, for a person that's not really into guns, a 38 makes a lot more sense. And you're not going to have some of those weird little quirks that come up. But as where somebody that might be a pro with a revolver and carrying a revolver and know how to keep their revolver in tip-top shape, get everything polished right, get the right moon clips, yeah, I could see an advantage to a 9mm revolver. And I know all you guys are pros, right? So interesting test here. And this is just one ballistic test. I'm not trying to be like this is the end-all be-all. Just one ballistic test here. But if I had to go by what I'm seeing here, yeah, I would probably honestly pick 9mm over this 38 myself, because I know that reloading in a self-defense situation is very unlikely, and I always carry my revolvers clean, so that last hang up there probably wouldn't happen for me in a self-defense scenario. So interesting test overall. You guys can tell me what you think. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.